This is the weekly wrap up presented by the Conversation Project, and I am Jay Clifton Payne. This is simply the wrap up of news stories we posted all week on the Conversation Project's feeds on Facebook and Twitter, or call it X if you will. And we talked about most of these stories throughout the week in our daily videocasts and podcasts we call Things You Might Have Heard. Now, there we give you the latest per day of the day prior, so get you started off on your next day, and these are vetted by you and then curated by me into the best stories and the best story, if you will. Today, we're going to give you, in this podcast at least, we're going to give you the straight stats from what you said your engagement level was, the top 10 stories per what you said were tops. And unfortunately, that means we're talking about that guy and that gal again a lot, because that guy and that gal get a lot of attention per engagement for the social media. We also give perspective with some stories that are also ran, stories that are number 11 through 15. So obviously they're not the top 10 stories, but these are stories that get a lot of love throughout the week because they're in that range. They just didn't quite make themselves way out to the tops at the end when all was said and done. And for real perspective, the story that got exactly zero love in most cases, or most close to zero, that story we call the almost relevant story of the week. This story for this week comes down to number 223. 223 stories at the very bottom. This one was it, that were, or 222 stories less engaging than the top story, and you won't be surprised who we tell you that one's all about, or the number 2 story, because you shouldn't be surprised. If you've been following us long enough, you know who's been in the news, regardless of what they do or not do. So we'll get to that as well. Enough of that, and that's not a complaint by any way. It's just how it works out. Now, we'll explain how the feeds work out exactly, and your engagement runs the place for all the things we do for our headlines. We'll do that later on the podcast. Plus, we'll talk about the story of the week. The story of the week is one of the top 10 stories that we'll take and we'll expand on that one for deeper detail and a bit of more perspective into that level, editorial, if you will, a little bit of me into that one. But we'll get to that one in quite a bit. More details about how we do things all day, every single day, is at our website. This is theconversationproject.com. Also, email us at theconversationproject@gmail.com for ways to tell us how to do things better. It works just like that. Let's get to the countdown, going from 10 to 1. These are stories of the week ending December the 12th. Sorry, December the 2nd, 2023. Oh, that means on this day as we record this, we're 23 days till Christmas. It's getting closer. Let's get into story number 1, story number 10. The headline reads, Alabama priest runs off with teen, marries her. We pulled this from Audacity. Audacity is hard to explain what they are. They are a network of radio stations and media stations and the news network that they publish out there. And Audacity published this one, so we pulled it. It actually is a pretty big story, if you will, although we didn't want to talk about it because, as you can guess, we didn't want to touch it. A man who used to be a priest, his name is Alex Crow, who is 30 years old. He used to be a priest and a guest lecturer at a high school in Alabama. Ran off with a student that was of age, if you will. She was 18. They went overseas, and while he left, they took away his credentials, so he's no longer a priest, and they went in and got married and came back. So at this point, all things are more or less legal and well, except the fact that he was a priest and a lecturer at her high school and took her away to overseas, and being 12 years older than she was seems like a bad thing. Your mileage may vary on this one. This is one that I can't really give much judgment to. I can't give actually a lot of judgment to, but this is a headline that popped up. It got a lot of response, number 10 for the week. We did not want to touch it because we had other things that were a little less toxic, and some things are actually even more toxic to deal with. This is one we could not get away from. Ex-officer Derek Chauvin stabbed in prison. Ex-officer Derek Chauvin, of course, who was convicted for the murder of George Floyd and the I can't breathe thing, stabbed by another inmate on last Friday in federal prison in Arizona. He was stabbed 22 times. That inmate has been charged. We'll see how that plays out. You probably may see that story play its way out throughout next week when we see how it plays out in engagement going forward. But this is one, when it came out, was one of those things. Now, at the time, it was sort of a toss-up on the actual response to it, as in, one, how are prisoners not being taken care of in prisons? They're in prison, how to get away with this stuff? And two, some people wish he actually would have bled out and died, as you can guess with the range of things. He actually was attacked in the law library, of all places. In the law library, studying to try to work on his own case, inmates with a makeshift knife stabbed him there, or one inmate particularly got caught with that 22 times in that area. We will see how this one plays out. Continue on. Right now, Chauvin doing fine physically, maybe not so well mentally in the moment for what's happening here. Jim Harbaugh who, even though was not coaching the game, has not coached many games for Michigan all season, got 500,000 bonus from Michigan's in their defeat of Ohio State. Sorry for the very poor read. I don't know what happened with that one. Here's the deal. Jim Harbaugh is the coach for Michigan, and he may be moving on to an NFL team for his great work for not coaching this year. However, Michigan and Ohio State were matched up head to head last weekend for the Big Ten Conference East Division title and a chance to go to the Big Ten Championship. Both teams undefeated, both teams looking to basically outshow each other, and Ohio State essentially being crowned ahead of time as this is their year to win this thing. They were able to beat their rival and, of course, put a blemish on Ohio State's record, which makes them harder to get a chance to get that championship ranking because, one, they can't win the Big Ten Championship, and two, no longer undefeated. Guess what? Jim Harbaugh, as the coach of Michigan, even though he's been suspended all year for a lot of crazy things, is getting a $500,000 bonus because it's on his contract. He is still the coach. He may be suspended, but he's still the coach. And college football is weird. Business is weird. College sports is weird. College football, very weird. Number 7 story. Finland is blaming Russia for sudden influx of migrants on its eastern border. We pulled this from AP. The AP News had this full story, and it is one thing that is kind of a deal because of what's happening. Finland is finding itself with migrants from the Middle East and Africa who are trying to get into Finland. And it's just been a long sort of trickle of asylum seekers that are just getting there. But this month has been a surge from folks from Syria, Yemen, Somalia, Iraq, and Afghanistan, people from the Middle East. No proper documentation. We see this thing here in the States as many people from various other countries are now crossing the border in Mexico that aren't just Hispanic Americans from South America. They're from all over as well. Who are they blaming? That being the Finns. They're blaming Western countries, basically dealing with Russia. Russia is using migrants as pawns to destabilize Western democracies. So they're saying, hey, go to Finland, go to United States, go someplace that's nice and go. You may live in an S-hole country, so why don't you go there because they love you there. And Russia is essentially getting the blame from Finland. Finland is basically saying the Russians are essentially propping people up to come there and just overflood the borders, which would not be a bad way to try to flood a country and sort of be a pest of folks. It's a lot less deadly than sending troops down to overtake a country, because that's not working so well for Russia right now in Ukraine. But maybe if you can convince people from not so well off places to become a pest in well off places, that will help destabilize those places. Could be a pretty good plan. And number 6, Bills linebacker Von Miller facing arrest for assaulting a pregnant person, Dallas police say. And that's the headline AP put. And I have a lot of heartburn with that headline. Well, here's what happened. They actually said what happened in the article, which was great. Von Miller, who's currently a linebacker for the Buffalo Bills, turned himself into police and was discharged, was facing domestic violence charges against the mother of his children, a pregnant person. A person who gets pregnant is a woman, and that was happened. He was wanted for a few days for a major disturbance at the home, domestic abuse. It's just been sort of a thing for him. Von Miller, who was basically known as a lovable, huggable guy for the NFL for all practical purposes, has this issue to deal with because the mother of his children, currently pregnant right now, is something going on. So a pregnant person was assaulted, which made the assault, I guess, more counts towards that. $5,000 bond was all he was needed to basically set himself free for the moment, but we'll basically come back to this fairly soon. We were football heavy this week, and I might have been just because I was just into a bunch of football because it was coming out of Thanksgiving week. But we had a lot of big football things pop in there, and you engaged with them a lot, making many of them in the top 10 this week. Tua Tagovailoa makes history. First Dolphins player since Dan Marino to throw 3,000 plus passing yards in first 11 games. Great for Tua. Tua is showing that what he did in Alabama and why he overtook that other guy might have been a good reason, because he set a franchise record against the New York Jets and proved why he's a strong contender for the NFL MVP title this year. What also is maybe proven, something else Dan Marino did at Florida, or Miami particularly, but never did, was get that Super Bowl. Tagovailoa is new to the league, so he's only got an early chance to do that. And of course, he's been hurt a good chance or out for a good chance because of some easings. But his second season, working this thing, and now he's got 3,000 passing yards plus 11 first games. He is on a path to basically blow out Dan Marino in records for being a better player, extra games and different stance and things like that as well. We also need to see how Florida's football, or Miami's football specifically, will deal with this actual contendership for actually winning a title. That's something that must be seen. Let's go to the world of law again, the world of entertainment again, and the world of Jonathan Majors, which is a whole nother world in its own. Headline coming out of Thursday: Jonathan Majors arrives for domestic violence trial with Megan Good at his side and a Bible in hand. Jonathan Majors, of course, known for it's basically just blowing up all over the place as an actor, and of course being cast as Kang the Conqueror, or the Kangs of note in the MCU for the Marvel Universe for the next batch of Avengers tales, and then blowing up literally as he had a domestic violence issue with an ex-girlfriend, the now ex-girlfriend. His now current girlfriend, Megan Good, was by his side as they went to court the other day. He also had a Bible in his hand, trying to show, and all this is PR, because it's all about PR, not saying that it's not real, but it's a show, that he is changing, he's understanding, and maybe he's just understood. A good woman, pun intended, by his side, and holding the Bible, showing that he has a bit of relevance and a bit of conjecture where things are going, is something that could go a long way to show people in a jury or people a judge that maybe he's on the straight and narrow, or maybe there's a misunderstanding. On his case, he's saying that the charges are false, and that the woman who's making the charges, essentially, for all lack of better words, is kind of crazy. We will see this thing play out literally in court over the next couple of weeks. I'm not sure how we got back here, but we're back to Bobby Petrino at Arkansas. The headline we posted on Tuesday, rolling into Wednesday, was Arkansas finalizing deal to bring back ex-head coach Bobby Petrino as offensive coordinator. This was done late on that day, and by Wednesday it was announced. Bobby Petrino, for those who don't know, aren't big football fans, he is a college football coach, is a head football coach in many ways, is an NFL football coach as well, who once coached at the Arkansas Razorbacks about a decade ago. He left unceremoniously after a bit of a scandal where, to boil it down to the short version, Bobby Petrino was having an affair with a women's volleyball player and ended up getting her a job on his football staff. He was still having the affair while she was on staff. Her job was basically making sure players got the work done. And one day, while riding their motorcycle together, he was into a crash. And to keep from her getting hurt on the back of the motorcycle, he essentially crashed it into his face and messed himself up. And then we found out that the reason why he didn't do like a basic maneuver to not hurt himself in the motorcycle was because he had another person on the back of it. It was his girlfriend, who had been sleeping with him since she was a student, who worked for him and stuff. So because, you can't have that sort of thing hanging over your head as a football team, when you have people, teachers or young men, to teach them good things, he got fired. And the fans hated it because he was winning, and Arkansas hadn't won anything since. So he's back, not as head coach, because the head coach is a guy they like with great moral character. Bobby Petrino, everybody hates. However, they expect him to win again as offensive coordinator, and so all are well in the world. Maybe. We'll see how this plays out next year, and whether Arkansas actually bounces back and has some winning ways, and whether the current head coach should be counting his days to see if Petrino's essentially out for his job, because it's just an excuse to not have him there. It's just a way to sneak him in going forward. I say this with pure reverence because I was there when this happened. I actually covered this story as a sports reporter, sports talk show guy at the time, and it was one of those things where the Arkansas fans, of course, they want to win, but their guy is actually kind of a crass jerk. And what you hear from the reports right now is they still think he's a crass jerk, but they kind of want to win. That's how they're going with this. Let's get to number 2 story. And these two stories are pretty much intertwined, so we're just going to get to that. Now, we'll get back to Mark Cuban in the almost rants, because he made a lot of news this week, news that was actually relevant. But this is a story that you guys jumped onto coming out of the weekend. So by Monday, I was sure this was number 1 story by the numbers, the sheer numbers. We'll get to numbers when we talk about number 1. The headline is, Mark Cuban urges Taylor Swift to drop Travis Kelce and date someone from the Dallas Mavericks on The View. Mark Cuban stops by the Views. He did a tour of things, just sort of doing some interviews popping up before his real big news that popped up later in the week. But it's essentially just sort of talking about how sports people react to entertainment people and all the other stuff. Mark Cuban was like, you know what? That's kind of cute what they got going on. But, I got 12 guys on my team that I think we can find someone for Taylor Swift. Why? Because Taylor Swift brings big money and big attention to sports. Not well, I am sure why, because she's Taylor Swift, but that's what's happened. So Mark Cuban dropped the sort of the line that, you know what, she should dump that Kelsey guy and hang out with one of the guys. I got an MVP in my team. I've got a team of 12 guys who are ready to go. Didn't quite play for the audience as it was. It was a bit of a funny thing, but he was there. He also said the same thing on First Take as well, saying that, it'd be great. What they have going on is great, but you know what? I know some guys. We can make something happen. Let's do a quick stop pause for some fanfare for the number one story, which will involve those other two guys again, if you will. Now, I've told you I believe this story was going to be the number one story, number two story on Mark Cuban saying that Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift would break up. But this story right here is 160% more engaging than that story, although it's technically the same story. And the whole shebang is 2,023,000. 900% more engaging than the story at the very bottom today, which is 223. So what did it take to make this story 222 more times engaging than that one? It's a top Twitter story because some reason they jumped on this one big time. And here is your headline for your number one story for this week. Taylor Swift likes Instagram post about Travis Kelce setting new NFL record. That's it. That's all. Taylor Swift liked an Instagram post about Travis Kelce setting a new NFL record. That's all it took for people to go gaga over this. The Chiefs won over the Raiders in Los Angeles now, 31-17 on the day. And Taylor acknowledged Travis' achievement on social media, including becoming the new all-time leading receiver in Chiefs history. That's it. He got a record. Cool record. I'm happy for him. I'm a Travis Kelce fan. But what did we get out of this? Absolutely nothing. Except that you guys love you some Travis Kelce and some Taylor Swift, or Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. Is there a shift? Is there some sort of shipping name for them? Because they're both T's. I don't know. They're not like Mahomes and Otto, I guess. So you could see how that worked out. I guess the reality is it's Taylor Swift's world, and Travis Kelce is lucky enough to actually share a bit of the crown, a bit of the throne, if you will. But we're all just living in it, unless it's Beyonce's world, and then it's on that world as well. It is what it is. It was what it was. It did what it did. That was the top story of the week, number one story of the week. However, we have something called the Story of the Week podcast, and the top story for that one is not Taylor Swift or Travis Kelce. Fortunately, we are going back to talk about the Arkansas story and Bobby Petrino, and actually about college football as well. We're going to roll in some Jim Harbaugh and all the weird college football goings-ons about the coaching game in college football, because you guys were interested in a lot of coaching stuff. So I'm going to take the chance to just talk all sports for the weekend and see how it works out well. It's normally more political or more news focused, current events focused, but hey, we're going to talk football this week, and I love talking football. The runner-up story for getting a chance to talk about the story, oddly enough, dealt with football and Von Miller, although this was more domestic violence, which because it was, and that angle would have been Von Miller, maybe going back to Jonathan Majors, and how athletes and actors and people who are famous have a different sort of standard to live up to. And I say that knowing that these people may have been capable of doing the things they're accused of, than other people in their daily lives for these types of issues. But we're not talking about that. That was going to be a much deeper, heavy discussion if we went that way. We're going with a not so deep, heavy discussion, but just me sort of bitching and complaining about how coaches make a bunch of money and can be a bunch of jerks and get away with it because the fan bases want to win. That's what we're going to do. There you are. Story of the week. We're talking about Bobby Petrino. We'll throw in some Jim Harbaugh and some other weird coaching things because the coaching carousel will be a thing coming this week after championship week. Now, how we got this top headline? We took the articles, all the headlines from the rest of the top 10 and moved them, shuffled them in different orders. And we battled out the headlines back to back to see which headline came out the better, if you will. And we went with the Bobby Petrino because it's such a personal thing to me. And I don't know why it's personal, but it's just something because I remember it. And it just sort of the outrage of people wanting better people in their lives and people doing better things, but people really want to win. So they'll go with the devil because the devil will get them at least 9 wins a season. It is what it is. At this point, I need to take a break. I need a breather. So we're going to pause for a second for actual commercials because we've got to keep the lights on, if you will, make some money to keep things going here. Check out the commercials. Stick with us for a quick 2-minute break, and then we'll be back for the Almost Rans and wrap it up with the final story of the week, which is a story no one really cared for. But you might want to care for it when we get to that. That's coming up in just a moment from the weekly wrap up for the week ending December the 2nd, 2023. We are happy to bring in a new sponsor today, and they're not so much new as in we've not known about them. They're new to me actually putting them in the lineup for sponsorship. I've had them in my affiliate group for a while because I've been using this for a while. Ground News is a great source for your news. Now, you're coming to the Conversation Project, and we're giving you different stories as a curation from different sources, some of them on the left, some of them on the right. Some of them try to stay in the middle fairly well, but all of them go a various different swath of different coverage. And we never really know which one will connect. In fact, sometimes we take a left-leaning headline for a right-leaning article story and see what happens, see how people pull in that. Ground News will give you the news directly from the sources and tell you how the sources play. So they have ranges that tell you whether a source is more left, more right, more middle, how many articles are being covered, how many stories being covered by how many outlets, and what the consensus is. If more people are saying that things are great, it'll tell you that. Prime example, this past week, Henry Kissinger died. And there were articles that had headlines that went from Henry Kissinger is ready to sit by the left hand of God because of all the great things he did, to Henry Kissinger needs to burn in hell, and we're finally glad he's gone and should have left longer a long time ago. Yay and nay. Various articles, various outlets having various different coverage of that one guy, and Ground News could kind of give you how things are going. So if you're looking for going deeper into the echo chamber, this can help you do that. But if you're really looking to see how things are being covered and how things sometimes are slanted and are not fair, Ground News can give you that. A subscription to Ground News will give you all the details, all the love you need for all the stories you have to. And you can get it right now for less than $10 a year. Check it out at our link for our affiliate because we get a cut back from when you sign up for Ground News at this is theconversationproject.com/ground news. This is theconversationproject.com/ground news. That's GROUNDNEWS. Ground News is one of 3 different apps I use as main aggregators on my phone because you can't scroll. The news is easy on that one. And Ground News has been a fun site and a very useful site for the past couple of months. I believe you'll find the same usefulness as well as you get your main news from them. Remember, we are a supplemental source. They can be as well, and they can help you out and help us out by being a subscriber, being a person who actually uses the subscription, and we to cut back there for the affiliate as well. The Conversation Project lives online at this is a Conversation Project. There are many ways you can be involved with the Conversation Project. The most simplest, easiest, bestest way is just follow the feeds we have on Facebook and Twitter, or X. Facebook.com/this is a Conversation Project, and Twitter.com/th_conversation, X.com, if you will. And you can engage in the stories we post. Every 50 minutes or so, all day, all night, 7 days a week, we post news headlines from various sources. We want you to engage them, literally like them, love them, hate them, share them. Please read them so you can get stories from different sources, different venues at different times of the day. And they're all over the place. When they get posted, it makes a difference on how people can engage in them because you can't engage in something that's not out there, or it's hard to engage in something that's been past a few hours that's not getting the engagement for their algorithms to come up on those levels. We ask you to email us at theconversationinbox@gmail.com because that way you can tell us what to do to work on things. We ask you to check out our partnerships page and our sponsorship page because partnerships allow you to directly help us get things done, and sponsors allow you to buy things and we get affiliate cuts back from them. Stop by our website and find out all the places you can find us. We're in audio form, video form, just newsletter form, the simplest ways, or the more complicated ways. And you can also find out where we do our daily drops in shorts and TikToks for news headlines and things that get your reaction there as well. Those also help us figure out what we're talking about in these shows. We're all over the place. The goal is to get the best conversation and the best news stories, sometimes the worst news stories, with the best people to have conversations with. We have worldwide reach. We have a lot of people around the world, around the nation, and around you that are interested in these stories. So you tell us what stories are most interesting. We'll make sure we'll put those up there. Check us out at our website, thisisconversationproject.com. Check out all the ways I said to check us out, and we thank you in advance for what you're willing to help us out with. We're back to actual news, and these are actual news stories that we covered, most of them, but weren't quite big enough to be top 10. Henceforth, 11 through 15, the almost ran headlines. Headline the first in this batch, number 11, is Wish falters in box office debut. Now, however you cover this story across the nation, Wish was the new Disney original animated film that came out over Thanksgiving weekend. It did not make much money. It did not make much money at all, making about $50 million for the entire weekend, for like Thanksgiving plus the weekend. It got beaten out by many other things, including the Thanksgiving slasher film that opened up the week prior or so. It got a strong rating from reviews, and a lot of people seem to like it as beautiful, but it just did not play. And some of the issues people seem to have with is the Disney factor. Disney seems to not be doing well in anything right now. It's not just the Marvel movies, it's anything Disney puts money behind, and it may be people are kind of, bummed out with Disney. It may be a direct boycott, if you will. But this movie did not bring in people like the remakes, live action remakes, like The Little Mermaid was like an extra hour long, and people went to see that beautiful movie, but it was a redo. This is something brand new. Disney's having issues with its original stories these days. Back to the Kansas City Chiefs and their game against the Raiders. But this is not about the game. This is about the games that we play outside of that. The headline for this reads, Young Kansas City Chiefs fan is accused of racist blackface by reporter. A couple of reporters actually took note of the CBS coverage of a young fan who was wearing an Indian headdress, had his face painted one half red, one half black, the colors of the Kansas City Chiefs. What was interesting was a lot of the pictures that you got to see online was the fact of the half black part, which would be to show that some kid is walking around the stadium in blackface wearing an Indian headdress for some strange reason. Doesn't make much sense. Going deeper into the story, it gets more detailed, slightly more rational, for lack of a better word. But as I said earlier when we covered the story, this is one we actually covered in the daily show. Something that probably should not have happened. Now, the young man is actually a Native American. He is of Native American descent, and his grandfather actually sits on a board for one of the local tribes. So he's got all that gravitas to do that. He has every right to show up wearing a headdress and have his face painted in war paint. Half black, half white, probably not the best look. The headdress itself, probably not the best look. And of course, Chiefs fans are still getting heat for doing the tomahawk chop, because they do. And it does. And it's all there. Now, the mother of the child, as the social media backlash went back and forth, was like, and the boy is Native American, so please back the hell off. My kid is, and that's fine. And she has every right to do that. But she also probably should not have let him do that. And while people have been blasting me in the comments and saying, well, the boy has a right to do, yeah, a lot of people have the right to do, and that also means they have the right to not do and not set things up. It's one thing to have the accusations shot against him, which are cruel and hurtful and all that stuff. If he wasn't there and CBS didn't have a picture of half his face in black, someone would not have pulled out that and tried to turn it into something. So you can bitch and complain at the reporters. You can bitch and complain at the TV people. You can bitch and complain at me himself. I'm not saying it was a bad thing once we found out the details. But guess what? It took 3 days of unraveling the thing to find out the details. And that's why this should not have been a story. And this kid should not have been targeted and made famous in this level anyway. He should be made famous when he's an actual, like a judge or a clerk or a state senator or maybe even president one day. Not because he had one spot on TV that somebody thought was a big hit and would get people to talk about it then going forward. This I wish I had a chance to make into the story of the week, but this one, not quite a top 10 story, so it did not actually get that love. Mark Cuban getting more love, and what he's actually doing that's actually newsworthy. 2 stories popped out this week, but this is one that got the most love That wasn't him saying Taylor Swift should date one of the Dallas Mavericks. This is him saying he's leaving the Dallas Mavericks. He's also leaving Shark Tank too, but this was one that really pulled the numbers. He is selling the Dallas Mavericks, or a good share of it, getting about $2 billion for what he paid about $283 million for. The valuation of the company is now at $3.5 billion, based on Mark Cuban buying a team that was essentially a laughing stock that had to be there because you kind of needed that team to play against. The number one team in NBA Jam with Tom Izzelino, which that's the reason why nobody knows the Dallas Mavericks and Tom Izzelino, became a stalwart, became a championship team, and of course became a team that was leading the way of the NBA in how to run a show. Essentially taking some of the minor league and the baseball sort of frivolity of fun and bringing it to the pros and having people show up and have fun. And oh, by the way, watch a good basketball team at the same time. Mark Cuban is able to pocket a whole lot of money, $2 billion more or less, and do what he wants to. And what's he want to do? He still wants to run the Dallas Mavericks. He gets a chance to stay and work. And now we're not sure how long that's going to work out, but basically the goal, the dream of any startup founder is to get bought out and keep working at the job and doing the things that made it work well because they wanted to keep doing well. Mark Cuban gets to continue to work as a controlling owner. He gets to keep doing the stuff that makes things happen every day and pockets a lot of cash in the process. We updated the headline for the story in 14 to the latest headline. We may see this headline again next week as it's actually rolling through for the Friday edition, so it may make it through the weekend or whatever. But Angel Reese is back at LSU, and the headline we're going with for 14 is Angel Reese leads LSU to win in return for mysterious absence. The headline in 13, it was either one about the fact that she was officially benched or was coming back. And the reason behind the benching was still rumored to be bad GPA. Angel Reese said it was essentially mental health. She needed a rest day. Her coach was like, okay, you're the best player in the nation. You get some rest. She took 4 days off and came back and was able to basically blow away the opposing team coming back from playing. So she got some rest. She's doing well, and that's what's going on. Whether we'll hear about the background stuff of the beef between the parents and bad GPAs and whatever, we'll see. There really isn't much of a 1 year one and done thing for women's basketball. Although Angel Reese is a transfer from another school, so she's been doing this quite a while. She's probably ready to go to the pros or do some level of that. But we'll have to see how this thing actually plays out going forward. And number 15, we're going to read the headline and move on quickly from here. Clippers announcer accidentally called the Nuggets during the game, but quickly corrected himself. You can click the link for the story we had on this one. This is from the blog Fadeaway World, which covers a lot of basketball, a lot of sports stuff. And the Denver Nuggets and Los Angeles Clippers had an entertainment game last week, but the Clippers commentator dropped a racial slur on naming the Nuggets and then figured it out, fixed it quick, moved on. No harm, no foul. Well, there are some harms and some fouls, but you can go deeper into the story if you like. I think you get the gist of what it is. Now, I want to remind you one more time that we are living online. Oops. Looks like we forgot to clear out some of the slides. So if you're listening to the audio, we're just going to do some producing on air and move forward on this one as we move forward to get to the right slide. So bear with us. In the meantime, now, I want to remind you that this is a conversation project.com is our home online. So if you are looking to see more details about what we do behind the scenes, check it out at this. It's conversationproject.com. You can email us anytime you want to at the conversation inbox at gmail.com. That way, you can let us know what we can do better or not so worse going forward. Also, check out our feeds on Facebook and Twitter or X. Facebook.com/this is a conversation project. And twitter.com/th_conversation. Facebook.com/this is a conversation project. And twitter.com/th_conversation. Check those places out and you can see how you can be engaged with the shows because you literally engage with the stories that are there for us to talk about. It's that simple. You engage in the stories, we have things to talk about. You do that every single day, we will have something to talk about. Now, let's talk about the story you did not want to talk much about, which is interesting. And it brings back notes of Brene Brown. And so we go to story 223 for this week. This story I told you was 2 million times less engaging than Taylor Swift liking an Instagram post by Travis Kelce. The story happens to read with a headline: Merriam-Webster announces its word of the year for 2023. Maybe because the word was not in the actual headline, it did not get any real love. That word is authenticity. Lots of looks, lots of searches, lots of people looking for authenticity. And as I say, it seems like a Brene Brown comeback is just days away for 2020 into 2023 into 2024. We'll be back into everything being authentic again. Authentically done for the week. Thank you so much for joining us for this show and all the things we do for the weekly wrap up and for the Conversation Project. My name is Jay Cleveland Payne. We invite you to follow us on our feeds every single day, all night, so you can tell us what stories to talk about in the headline show like this, or the morning headline show we have 5 days a week called Things You Might Have Heard. That gives you the headlines for the previous day to get your day started. This one tells you how the week ended. I think we ended pretty good. Way too much Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce. Otherwise, pretty good. We also have the story of the week coming up in a separate feed on a separate podcast link, so look for that. We're talking college football coaches, and Bobby Petrino is the main target. He's the spark that's going to cause this fire that hopefully people will enjoy, or they'll probably just call me an idiot. They'll probably just call me an idiot. In the meantime, you can call me whatever you want to via the email by emailing us at the conversationinbox@gmail.com, but at least have some constructive feedback there as well. And stay limber, stay hydrated, stay on task for grand things you are here to do. We need you to keep going through. We've got 4 weeks left in this year, and the next 12 months. We want you here for much longer than that. So do what you can to make sure you are extending your life and not shortening your life on purpose. What stories will be top 10 next week? What stories will you choose as the real, true stories that we're highly engaged in? We'll find out next week. So for all the folks at the Conversation Project, I'm Jay Cleveland Payne. We'll see what happens for the week ending December the 9th, 2023, as we wrap up this week ending December the 2nd, 2023.